Welcome to our deep dive today.
Oh, yeah,
It looks like we're ready to tackle impulse control disorders.
we are.
And you've provided quite the reading list, academic journals, to research handbooks.
Yeah.
So you're not just interested in the what, but also the why behind these conditions.
Yeah.
The history, the causes, the treatments, even some surprising facts along the way.
Exactly.
Right.
And it's fascinating
Yeah.
because impulsivity touches so many aspects of human behavior.
Yeah,
We can certainly delve into those historical perspectives,
yeah.
but I think it's more engaging to start with something relatable.
Yeah.
Have you ever made a snap decision
Oh,
that you later regretted?
all the time.
Maybe an online purchase?
Oh, yeah.
Or blurting something out?
Oh, all the time. That add to cart button is too tempting.
Exactly.
You're saying that's a glimpse into the world of impulsivity.
It is, because at its core, impulsivity is about that gap
Uh-huh.
between urge and action.
Okay.
And while we all experience it, it's when that gap narrows significantly,
Oh,
when the urge becomes overwhelming and the consequences serious,
yeah.
that we step into the realm of impulse control disorders,
Okay.
or ICDs.
So little impulsivity is normal, but it's a spectrum.
Yeah.
Got it. Now I'm even more curious about those historical perspectives.
Okay.
How did people even begin to make sense of this urge-action connection?
Well, imagine a time
Yeah.
when mental processes were a complete mystery.
Okay.
Ancient Greeks, with their theory of humorism,
Okay.
believed our temperament was tied to bodily fluids.
Okay.
Too much black bile.
Mm-hmm.
And you might be melancholic and prone to impulsive anger, for example.
So my bad decisions are all because of black bile.
Well,
I guess I can blame the ancient Greeks for that.
we've come a long way since then.
Yeah.
But it's important to see those early theories as attempts to find explanations.
Yeah.
Later in the 18th century, there was phrenology.
Huh?
The idea that the shape of your skull could reveal personality traits, including impulsivity.
I've seen those diagrams. The skull mapped out like a brain atlas.
Right.
It seems so off base now.
It was ultimately debunked.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that phrenology was an early attempt to link specific behaviors to brain regions,
Okay.
which is something modern neuroscience still does,
Yeah.
just with much more sophisticated methods.
So even though they were wrong, these early ideas paved the way for how we understand impulsivity today.
Absolutely.
Huh.
They highlight that age-old quest
Mm.
to understand what drives human behavior
Yeah.
and why some of us struggle with control more than others.
Okay.
And that brings us to the modern definition of impulsivity,
Okay.
which has moved beyond those simplistic explanations.
From black bile to brain scans, it's been quite a journey.
It has.
So how do researchers define impulsivity today?
Early on, it was often described as action without forethought,
Right.
which captures the essence,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not that simple. Modern research breaks down impulsivity into subtypes:
Okay.
cognitive,
Oh,
motor, and non-planning.
Okay, so it's not just one thing.
No.
What are the differences between those subtypes?
Think of it like this.
Okay.
Cognitive impulsivity is about making hasty decisions.
Hmm.
Like that online purchase you mentioned.
Right.
You don't fully consider the consequences.
Yeah.
Motor impulsivity is about acting without thinking,
Okay.
perhaps blurting out a rude comment.
Gotcha.
And non-planning impulsivity
Okay.
refers to a lack of foresight or organization,
Right.
maybe failing to meet deadlines because you didn't plan ahead.
I can definitely relate to all three of those.
I think we all can.
But how do researchers actually measure these different aspects of impulsivity?
One widely used tool
Yeah.
is the Barrett Impulsiveness Scale,
Hmm.
or BIS-11.
Okay.
It asks a series of questions designed to assess those different subtypes.
Gotcha.
For example, to measure motor impulsivity. It might ask, do you often act without thinking? Or do you have trouble finishing tasks?
Right.
And based on your responses,
Yeah.
it generates a score for each subtype,
Okay.
giving a more detailed picture of your impulsive tendencies.
So it's not just are you impulsive,
Right.
but how are you impulsive?
Precisely.
Okay.
And that's crucial because it allows us to tailor interventions and treatments more effectively.
Okay.
But here's something that might surprise you.
Okay.
There's also functional impulsivity.
Functional impulsivity. Does that mean there's a good kind of impulsive?
Exactly. Imagine a firefighter rushing into a burning building,
Right.
or a doctor making a split-second decision during surgery.
Yeah.
In these cases, Acting quickly
Mhm.
without overthinking can be life-saving.
Okay.
Functional impulsivity is about those quick decisions that
Okay.
lead to positive outcomes.
So it's not always a bad thing.
No.
In fact, it can be a valuable asset in certain situations.
Mm-hmm.
This raises an interesting question. Can we learn to cultivate that good impulsivity
Right.
while managing those impulsive tendencies that get us into trouble?
It's a fascinating area for further research.
It is.
But to understand how to manage impulsivity,
Yeah.
we need to look at what's happening in the brain when those urges take over.
Let's dive into the neuroscience then.
Okay.
I've read that certain brain areas are linked to impulse control.
Yeah.
What are those key players?
Well, imagine your brain as a complex network of highways
Right?
with signals directing traffic flow.
Yeah.
When it comes to impulse control,
Mm-hmm.
there are three key areas:
Okay.
the orbitofrontal cortex,
Yeah.
the striatum,
Okay.
and the amygdala.
Okay. 3 brain regions.
Yeah.
What are their roles in keeping our impulses in check?
The orbitofrontal cortex is like the executive decision maker,
Okay.
helping us weigh the consequences of our actions. It's
Wow.
the think before you act part of the brain.
So when I'm debating whether to have that extra slice of cake, my orbitofrontal cortex is trying to remind me of my fitness goals.
Exactly. It's
Okay.
trying to keep you on track.
Yeah.
Then we have the striatum,
Mm-hmm.
which plays a crucial role in our reward system.
Right.
It's all about seeking pleasure and forming habits.
Yeah.
Think of it as the go for it center.
So my striatum is the one saying cake is delicious, go for it.
You got it.
Okay.
It's driving that desire for immediate gratification.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, we have the amygdala,
Yeah.
which is responsible for processing emotions,
Okay.
especially fear and anxiety.
Interesting.
It's the danger Will Robinson signal.
So how does the amygdala factor into impulsivity?
Well, in some cases,
Mhm.
it can act as a brake on impulsive behavior.
Okay.
If you're about to do something risky,
Yeah.
your amygdala might trigger those feelings of fear or anxiety,
Right.
making you hesitate.
Yeah.
But in individuals with certain ICDs,
Yeah.
that fear response might be blunted
Right.
or even absent, making them more likely to engage in dangerous or reckless behaviors.
So it's like their internal alarm system isn't working properly.
That's one way to think about it.
Okay.
And then, in addition to these brain regions,
Mm-hmm.
we have to consider the role of neurotransmitters,
Okay.
particularly serotonin and dopamine.
So how do these neurotransmitters, serotonin and dopamine,
Yeah.
influence our experience of reward and pleasure?
They do.
I know they're often called the feel-good chemical.
They are.
Okay.
Dopamine is all about that anticipation and excitement
Mhm.
of a reward.
Mhm.
Think about the rush you get when you win a game
Right.
or receive a compliment.
Yeah.
That's dopamine at work.
Okay.
Serotonin, on the other hand,
Yeah.
is more about a sense of calm and well-being,
Right.
that feeling of contentment.
So dopamine is the motivator and serotonin is the stabilizer.
Exactly.
Right.
And when it comes to impulsivity,
Yeah.
research suggests that imbalances in these neurotransmitters might play a role. For instance, low levels of serotonin have been linked to increased impulsivity,
Okay.
while surges of dopamine are thought to fuel those addictive behaviors,
Yeah.
often seen in ICDs.
Mm-hmm.
Think about the thrill of gambling or the high from substance use.
Right.
It's that dopamine rush that keeps people coming back for more.
It's like that dopamine hit overrides the logical stop signals
Yeah.
from the orbitofrontal cortex.
Mm-hmm.
Everything we've talked about so far
Mm-hmm.
paints a really complex picture
It is complex.
of how our brains regulate impulsivity.
Mm.
It makes you wonder how those different types of impulsivity we discussed earlier,
Yeah.
reward impulsivity
Right.
and impulsive disinhibition,
Right, yeah.
actually play out in specific disorders.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that different ICDs involve different types of impulsivity.
Right.
And those nuances can inform treatment approaches.
Okay.
Let's take a closer look at some of the disorders outlined in the DSM-IV,
Okay.
starting with kleptomania.
Kleptomania is the overwhelming urge to steal.
Oh.
Right.
Precisely.
Not out of necessity, but because of an irresistible impulse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is that individuals with kleptomania often have family members with substance abuse issues.
Oh, wow.
Now, this doesn't mean that everyone with a family history of addiction will develop kleptomania,
Right.
but it suggests a possible shared genetic vulnerability.
So there could be a genetic link between these seemingly different disorders.
It's a strong possibility.
Wow.
And if we delve deeper,
Yeah.
it might be related to a common dysfunction in the brain's reward pathway.
Okay.
You see, both stealing and substance use can trigger that dopamine rush, that feeling of euphoria. And in some individuals, this reward system might be wired in a way that makes them more susceptible to these kinds of impulsive behaviors.
That's really interesting.
It is.
It's not just about a lack of willpower or morals. There could be underlying biological factors at play.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears to another disorder.
Okay.
Compulsive internet use. Often referred to as internet addiction. This is a relatively new phenomenon. But as technology becomes more integrated into our lives, it's something we're seeing more and more.
Especially with younger generations who have grown up with constant online access.
Exactly.
Is there a specific type of impulsivity at play here?
Well, research is still ongoing. It seems to involve a combination of reward impulsivity and impulsive disinhibition. The constant notifications, likes, and shares on social media can trigger that dopamine rush, reinforcing those addictive patterns of use.
It's like those platforms are designed to keep us hooked.
In many ways, they are.
And then there's the impulsive disinhibition aspect. That inability to resist clicking, scrolling, or engaging, even when we know we should be doing something else.
Exactly. And this can lead to significant problems in areas like work, school, and relationships. Now let's move on to a disorder that might be less familiar. Trichotillomania. This involves the recurrent pulling out of one's hair. Often from the scalp, eyelashes, or eyebrows.
I've heard of this disorder. And it seems incredibly distressing for those who experience it.
It can be very debilitating. And what's interesting is that there are two main types of hair pulling. Focused and automatic. Focus pulling is more deliberate, often done in response to stress or anxiety. Automatic pulling, on the other hand, occurs without the person even realizing it. Often while they're engaged in other activities like reading or watching TV.
That distinction seems crucial for treatment, right?
Absolutely. If someone is primarily an automatic puller, the first step might be to increase their awareness of the behavior. Then techniques like habit reversal training, which teaches them to replace the hair pulling with a more positive behavior, can be very effective.
So it's about interrupting that automatic response and replacing it with something healthier.
Precisely.
Now
moving on to pyromania. It's crucial to distinguish it from criminal fire setting. Arson is a crime, often motivated by anger, revenge, or financial gain. Pyromania, however, is a psychological disorder characterized by an irresistible urge to set fires, often accompanied by a sense of fascination or excitement.
That's an important distinction.
It is.
So not all arsonists are pyromaniacs.
Exactly. And while both involve fire setting, the motivations and underlying psychological processes are very different. Individuals with pyromania experience a buildup of tension or arousal before setting a fire. And then a sense of relief or pleasure afterward. It's that cycle of tension and release that reinforces the behavior.
It sounds like a very complex and challenging disorder to treat.
It is. And it often requires a multifaceted approach, addressing both the underlying psychological factors and the behavioral patterns. Now, let's talk about a disorder that might be more relatable to our listeners. Compulsive buying disorder.
I think we all know someone who loves to shop. But this goes beyond that, right?
Absolutely. Compulsive buying disorder is characterized by excessive shopping. That leads to significant distress or impairment in one's life. It's not just about enjoying shopping. It's about that loss of control, that feeling of being driven to buy things, even when you don't need them or can't afford them.
I've heard that online shopping has made this disorder even more prevalent.
It has.
Is there any truth to that?
It's certainly a contributing factor. The ease and accessibility of online shopping, coupled with targeted advertising and those buy now, pay later schemes, can make it very difficult for individuals with this disorder to resist their urges.
Like the temptation is always just a click away.
Exactly. And this highlights the importance of developing healthy coping mechanisms and seeking professional help if needed.
And finally, we have pathological gambling, which, as we discussed earlier, often involves that strong reward impulsivity.
It does.
That need for immediate gratification, even when the odds are stacked against you.
Yes, and what's truly remarkable about this disorder is the intensity of those cravings.
Oh?
Research suggests that the urge to gamble can be even more intense
Wow.
and harder to resist than cravings and alcohol dependence.
That's incredibly powerful.
It is.
It highlights just how challenging it can be to overcome this addiction.
It can be very challenging.
Now, with all these different ICDs and the complexities involved, I'm curious about the treatment options available. Is there a one-size-fits-all approach?
Unfortunately, there isn't.
Okay.
Treatment for ICDs often involves a combination of therapy and medication.
Yeah.
And the specific approach depends on the individual and the disorder.
Right.
But there are some common threads, like cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT.
I've heard about CBT.
Most people have.
So how does it help with impulse control disorders?
Well, CBT is all about identifying and changing those negative thought patterns and behaviors that contribute to the disorder.
Right.
It helps individuals develop coping mechanisms for managing urges, challenge those distorted thoughts that fuel impulsive behaviors, and ultimately gain greater control over their actions.
So it's about retraining your brain to respond differently to those triggers.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's about empowering individuals to make more conscious and deliberate choices.
I can see how that would be beneficial across a wide range of ICDs. Now, I know medication is often used alongside therapy.
Yes.
What are some of the medications typically prescribed for these disorders?
One medication that's been explored as a treatment option across various ICDs is naltrexone.
Naltrexone, okay.
It's an opioid antagonist.
Opioids are those powerful painkillers, right?
They are.
But how does blocking those effects help with impulse control disorders?
Well, it's thought that opioids might be involved in the brain's reward pathways. And by blocking those pathways, naltrexone may reduce the pleasurable feelings associated with the impulsive behavior.
Right.
For example, in individuals with gambling disorder, taking naltrexone might dampen that euphoric rush they get from winning, making it less rewarding and therefore less compelling.
So it's not about eliminating the urge altogether, but about making it less intense and easier to manage.
Exactly.
Okay.
However, it's important to note that the effectiveness of medication can vary depending on the specific ICD and individual factors.
It's not as simple as just taking a pill.
No.
And everything magically gets better.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
It's a much more nuanced process.
Okay.
And that's why ongoing research is so crucial.
Right.
We're still learning about the intricate interplay of genetics, neurobiology, and environmental factors in ICDs.
Yeah.
And this knowledge will hopefully lead to more targeted and effective treatments.
Speaking of the future of research.
Yeah.
What are some of the areas that scientists are particularly excited about when it comes to ICDs?
One promising avenue is personalized medicine,
Okay.
which aims to tailor treatments to specific subtypes of impulsivity and individual needs.
So rather than a generic approach, it's about finding the right treatment for the right person.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's about moving away from that one-size-fits-all model and developing more precise and effective interventions.
That's really encouraging.
It is.
It sounds like the future of ICD treatment is moving towards a more personalized and holistic approach.
It is.
Okay.
And another crucial area is early intervention and prevention programs.
Right.
Particularly when it comes to addressing impulsivity in youth.
That makes a lot of sense.
It does.
If we can catch these issues early on, it might prevent them from developing into full-blown disorders later in life.
Exactly.
Okay.
By teaching children and adolescents about impulsivity, helping them develop those self-regulation skills, and creating supportive environments. We can potentially reduce the impact of these disorders and promote healthier decision-making.
I'm really struck by this idea of functional impulsivity. That sometimes acting quickly and decisively can actually be a good thing.
It can.
It challenges our typical view of impulsivity as always being negative.
It does.
Yeah.
And it raises some interesting questions about how we can cultivate that good impulsivity.
Yeah.
That ability to act instinctively in a way that benefits us.
Right.
While still managing those impulsive urges that can lead to problems.
It makes you wonder if there are ways to train our brains to be more discerning, to hit that pause button when needed, but also embrace those moments where a quick decision is the best decision.
It's a fascinating area for further exploration.
It is.
Perhaps it's a combination of innate traits, learned behaviors, and mindful practice.
I think our listener will be pondering this as well.
I think so too.
It's such a thought-provoking concept.
It is. It really highlights the importance of self-awareness, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Recognizing our own impulsive tendencies and those triggers that set them off.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
If we're more aware of those patterns,
right,
we can start to develop strategies for managing them more effectively.
Exactly.
Okay.
For example, if you know you tend to overspend when you're stressed, you might avoid shopping malls or online retailers when you're having a tough day. Or if you find yourself getting caught up in those heated online arguments, you might take a break from social media altogether.
Speaking of those heated online arguments, it makes me wonder if there's a connection between impulsivity and how we behave on social media.
Right.
Those platforms can sometimes feel like a breeding ground for impulsive comments and reactions.
That's an astute observation.
Yeah.
And there is some research to suggest a link between impulsivity and problematic social media use.
Right.
Studies have shown that individuals who score higher on measures of impulsivity tend to engage in more risky online behaviors, such as sharing personal information impulsively or posting inflammatory content without thinking about the consequences.
So that filter between thought and action is a bit weaker.
Yeah.
And with social media being so instant and public, those impulsive moments can have real-world consequences.
Absolutely. It highlights the importance of cultivating that pause and reflect mindset, even in the fast-paced world of social media.
So it's not just about managing those big life-altering impulses, but also those everyday impulses that can affect our relationships and well-being.
Exactly.
What are some practical tips for developing that self-control muscle in those daily moments?
Well, in addition to self-awareness, which we've already discussed, I think one of the most valuable tools is mindfulness. Practices like meditation or deep breathing exercises can help us become more present, more aware of our thoughts and emotions in the moment. This can give us that space to choose a more thoughtful response rather than reacting impulsively.
So it's about training our minds to hit that pause button.
Yes.
Even if it's just for a split second, before we say or do something we might regret later.
Exactly. And it's a skill that takes practice, just like any other skill. But with time and consistency, we can develop that ability to observe our impulses without being controlled by them.
Alongside mindfulness. I imagine having a good support system can make a big difference as well.
Absolutely. Friends, family, therapists, people who can provide guidance and encouragement when we're struggling.
Having people we trust to talk to and confide in can provide that emotional buffer when we're feeling overwhelmed or tempted to give in to those impulsive urges.
Exactly. They can offer a different perspective, remind us of our goals, and celebrate our successes along the way.
It's like having a team of cheerleaders in your corner.
It is.
Rooting for you to make those healthier choices.
Exactly. And remember, you're not alone in this. Impulsivity is a part of the human experience. And we all struggle with it in different ways. The key is to approach it with compassion, understanding, and a willingness to learn and grow.
It's been such a fascinating and informative deep dive to the world of impulse control disorders.
It has been.
And I hope you, our listener, have gained some valuable insights into this complex topic.
Me too.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
From the historical roots of impulsivity to the latest scientific research.
We have.
And we've explored the different ways impulsivity can manifest. Both as a challenge and as a strength.
And as we wrap up, I think it's important to emphasize that this is just the beginning of your exploration. There's so much more to learn about impulse control, both in terms of the science and in terms of your own personal experiences.
Exactly. And as you continue to delve deeper into this topic, I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder. How can you cultivate that good impulsivity in your own life? That ability to make quick decisions that lead to positive outcomes, while still being mindful of those potential pitfalls we've discussed.
It's a fascinating challenge.
It is.
And one that invites us to embrace the complexities of human behavior. Those moments where our impulses can both hinder and empower us.
So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep striving to be the best version of yourself.
I agree.
Remember, knowledge is power.
It is.
Especially when it comes to understanding ourselves and our behavior.